Howdy. Welcome back to One Rental at a Time. Last week, I read a nanosecond of genius. Now, Todd Baldwin has a lot of moments of genius, but this was just a sentence in the middle of a paragraph. And so I ran with it because this sentence resonated. I hadn't heard it phrased this way before, but it really made sense. He said, "There are no secrets for the rich. What there are financial truths that the poor and middle class refuse to believe." So I made a short. I'm making a video on my channel where I really go into detail on what these are. Wow. So Zuber and I today are going to talk about there aren't secrets for the rich. The rich people are screaming from the mountaintops. Here's what I did. Here's how I did it. There are YouTube channels and people who reached financial freedom saying, here's the step-by-step process to get where we are. And so on my short, somebody asked a very smart question. There were some haters. But there was one who actually asked, okay, I'll bite. What is it that we refuse to believe? So let's go over a list back and forth on financial truths that poor and middle class refuse to believe, and I think are actually keeping them poor and middle class.
All right. Wow, this is going to be fun to talk about. So doing this in real time, right? It's really funny for 90% of my life. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. So I really see my life as three chunks. For the first 30 years, we were lower middle class or poor. My father was unemployed for 18 months. My mom was a stay-at-home. I fed the family as a teenager. Poor, not Dion poor. Dion's next level poor, but I would say poor, lower middle class. Then at 30, I start making decent income. I start living below my means. I start having an emergency fund, all of these things. So I would say definitely middle class. Then over the years, one rental at a time happens. And yes, as uncomfortable it is for me to say, you probably can say that I'm rich now. But the biggest one for me that I see, having now been trying to help people for 20 years, is they always try to time the market. It's time in the market. When Olivia and I started investing in Fresno, California in 2001, there was about a dozen other Silicon Valley people that I network with that also started investing in Fresno right around the same time. They bought the same type of house. I call it Norris Drive. If you read my book, that was the first one. But they bought similar ones. But what happened over the years is they made financial decisions. They increased their, instead of doing a cash out refi to buy more properties or 1031 to get bigger like Olivia and I did, they increased their lifestyle, which forced them to bust out in the Great Recession. The reason Olivia and I are where we are now is we've been in the game for 15 years, now 22 years or whatever it's been. So time in the market matters. If you're trying to time the market, even if you get right once or twice, you're eventually going to stay at the casino one step too far and you're going to bust out. Time in the market matters, but nobody wants to hear it. They all want to get rich quick. They all want the meme coin or meme stock to go from a penny to this and they're going to retire millionaires. No, you're not. You're going to stay at the blackjack table one more hand and bust out. It's time in the market.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that poor and middle class do is refusing to believe that there's a thing called good debt.
Yes.
There's a reason why Dave Ramsey is as successful as he is, because he helps a lot of people who never understand that there's good debt, stop creating bad debt, try to get out of bad debt, and then their retirement ultimately is better than what it would have been, but they won't take that next step.
Yeah.
Of there is debt that makes you more money than the debt costs. If it wasn't for debt, I would still have to work.
Oh, me too. Oh, no question. No question. No question. Yeah. So the next one for me is actually one of my rules on my 7 rules of ORAT, kind of twisted. I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to say it in a way that's provocative on purpose, because maybe that gets the reaction. Your friends suck. Your friends suck. They are keeping you at some level. And if you try to pull away, they pull you back or talk you down. Your friends suck. Get new friends. Your network is your net worth. You want to be a real estate investor? Stop talking to or stop watching the kid in the mom's basement who's never owned a rental, who's scaring you to death and telling you to stay on your hands in 2020 when it's the second best year ever to buy a home on the affordability scale. How's that feel? Your friends suck. That's my next one.
Since 2020, I've purchased 3 properties because I have friends like you and Matt and Millennial Mike and Beth, people that were like, yeah, you should be buying because time in the market's going to help you.
Yeah, do the math. Do the math.
A lot of poor and middle-class people refuse to believe this. They absolutely will fight you tooth and nail when you say this to the right people. And the less a man makes declarative statements, the less apt he is to look foolish in retrospect. So I hate to say the word always or never, but I'm going to.
Okay.
Nobody has saved their way to wealth. The poor and middle class think you have to save to become rich. That's a step on the ladder, one step on the escalator. If you don't find a way to put your money to work, Kiyosaki says it great. Savers are losers. Inflation will destroy you. Your ability to save is based on your ability to have income, which if your money is not working for you, your time is limited. Your resources are limited. There's only so many hours in a day. It's savers or losers. Find a way to put your money to work. We say it all the time. And then they take it one step further and they say, well, I'll save once I have money. And they refuse to believe that that's not a thing too.
Yeah. So my next one is the tax code. The tax code is very clear. I have these conversations with Sean Cannell at Think Media all the time. I think if you have a hobby today, I don't care what that hobby is, Matchbox cars, easy bake ovens, old Mustangs, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, whatever it is. If you haven't turned that into a content creation business, you are making a mistake. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's just take your cell phone, for example. I use this cell phone every day to do the daily financial news. This cell phone costs money. If I use this as a tool for my content creation business, I get to write it off above the line. If I'm just some Joe Schmo who wants the latest and greatest Apple product and I have to buy it on a monthly fee and blah, 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 you buy it below the line. And if you don't know what those two differences is, you need to go study on YouTube. Go type those in. But there are very simple tax codes, and that's just one example. Not only the $200 or I don't even know what my phone costs because it's a business expense. And then high-speed internet. And then this, and then that, and then this. The rich have spent the time to learn how to use the tax code and take expenses that are life expenses, move them from the below the line to above the line. And here's the deal. It's not a secret. It's just they have spent the time to go figure it out. It's not a secret. If you, let's say you make 100 grand and you net 80 grand. So you're really spending $80,000, not 100, because the other 20's gone to taxes. If you could find a way to legitimately take 10 grand in expenses and move it to above the line, that's going to make a fundamental difference in your business, in your life. You'll have more money to spend on other stuff. The tax code is there for everyone. It's not a secret. It's not hard. Use it.
I'll get to my next one, but before then, I actually want to have a moment of oversharing. I'll actually show real numbers when I make the video for mine. I'm actually going to show the clipped out portion of my W-2 for my last job. But I retired last year, mid-year. I made $205,000 at my last portion of that year that I worked. That's what I made. $44,000 in taxes. I made $203,000 in profit last year on my rental portfolio. So 205 from W-2, 203 from rental. It was a really good year. Last year ever working. Guess how much I'm paying on taxes on my rental income?
Zero. Wow, you were able to put it all.
I am
Wow.
again carrying forward a loss. I'm finishing up my taxes
Wow.
now.
That's
The
amazing.
tax, this is what the poor and middle class get wrong. They think the more you make, the more you're going to pay in taxes because they get a raise, they get a promotion, they work some overtime, they see more taxes going out. They refuse to admit, or not, they refuse to recognize that we do not have a tax penalty system. We have a tax incentive
Encouragement,
system.
incentive. Yes.
Right. So the other thing that I think that poor and middle class refuse to admit, refuse to recognize, and this is not a secret of the rich because we are all saying this all the time, is that the difference between poor, middle class, and wealthy isn't how much they make or how much they have. It's what they think the purpose of money is. Poor people think the purpose of money is to buy things. So if they want more things, they work more. The middle class think the purpose of money is leverage. So they want a good credit score so they can get a big house and a big car and have people think they are successful. Wealthy people understand the purpose of money is to make more money. And no matter how many times we say it, we'll hear poor and middle class say, well, the wealthy can make money with their money because they have a bunch. Well, you flash back to me having a bunch of bad debt, making $17 an hour. I could have chose to stay in my house, buy a nice car, take trips, but instead I moved into an apartment. I chose to move into an apartment and rent my house out. I chose to save for 2 years, work a side hustle, work overtime. I chose to buy a duplex instead of a house to reduce my housing costs. I knew when I was poor that the purpose, and I didn't for 40 years. So it's not like you're just born knowing this, but at 40, I was like, oh, maybe the rich people are onto something, that the purpose of money is to make money. How can I do that while I'm not making money and I have a bad debt to income ratio and a low salary and not a lot of resources? I had to come up with a plan to take my money to make more money.
Yeah, the last one I'll put out there is I think a lot of poor middle class folks think they buy into the 40-40 plan. I'm going to work 40 years, 40 hours for 40 years. And at 65 or 70, I'll retire and enjoy life. And as somebody who just came off a month-long trip, who was around, uh, folks of that age, let's just say it doesn't always turn out well. Now, certainly there were some folks that were very mobile and very healthy and all of that, but the number of wheelchairs or walkers or other things that I saw was disheartening. What I would tell folks that call themselves rich is I think it takes, generally speaking, 10 years to put together a plan in time and momentum and recycling capital or income snowball or whatever you choose to do to change your life forever. 10 years compared to 40, you're buying 30 years of your life, and I'll do that trade any day of the week.
I think there was a real dawning moment for me, like an epiphany moment last year while I was still working. So I retired in July, and end of April, beginning of May, I took a cruise. On the cruise, I had the same experience. Now, it wasn't a month long. I just took a 7-day Alaska, because I live here basically next to where the ship takes off from. So I might as well go.
Yeah. And Alaska is awesome. I've done that twice.
It was a great trip. I had a great time. I enjoyed doing it while I was in an age where I can enjoy the excursions. And I saw that there were several people, wheelchair or walker, or like that, the people who finally got done with more than 40 hours a week for more than 40 years to live on less than 40% of what you made, were at an age where it's not enjoyable. And I realized the time multiplication of the average person gets 4 or 5 hours a day that are theirs. You take out the amount of time that we sleep, commute to work, time at work, prep for work, and if you're lucky, you have 4 or 5 hours, and people usually fill that with Netflix or something like that. And so I was the average person. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, and I had that limited amount of time every day that was mine, and I chose to do YouTube with it. It's stupid. But when I retired, I now have an average of 15 hours a day that are mine. I still sleep. I still have to prep. I still have the things to do, right? But 15 hours a day compared to 5, which means in the next year, I'm going to live 3 times more than the people that are my peers that are still working. So My concept is live more, not longer. And I don't plan on
Ooh.
extending 80 to 90 because those to me aren't probably going to be enjoyable years.
Live
But if I
more,
can,
not longer. I like
yes.
that.
And I think I actually have a short on that one. But
That needs to be a t-shirt. Live more, not longer.
let me teach you how to
Perhaps.
live more, not
Yeah,
longer.
live more. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That was just
It,
sorry.
it
That
was
was
it was
awesome.
it was my epiphany moment. That's literally why. So I got back from the cruise and I thought I messed up and I made a video. I was like, let me look at my cash flow. What am I actually making? I never broke this down. So this was middle of the year before I retired. It's like a month before I retired. I did a video on if I took my annual cash flow, and at that time it was less than what it actually ended up being. It was $80 an hour if I worked a 40-hour week, and it was $19 an hour if I went every single hour of the day. What am I making? So why am I going to work if I'm doing this? And that was when my brain said, why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this? Darn it!
Right.
I'm being an idiot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The last thing that I'll wrap up with that the poor and middle class just absolutely refuse to accept. Wealthy people read books, whether it's
Ah,
Audible, podcast,
they
or
consume
something
content.
that
Yes.
consume content. I had a gentleman, Aaron, on my channel. He did a $100 super chat. He was super happy with the content. So I took like 5 minutes and I just wanted to dedicate. Here's how you start. Here's the next steps. And at the end, he pipes off with it. Yeah, I think I have like 14 properties, 40 units or something. And it's like, he is successful. He is at the point where he's at financial freedom on a YouTube channel, taking in content.
Yeah.
And so when you hear the quotes from like the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts of the average person reads 2 books a year. I know people who haven't read a book in 10 years, but the average multimillionaire reads 50 books a year. And that might not be they sit down and physically read a book, they might listen to it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm consuming hours of content every day. Yeah.
Yeah, and I started before hitting wealth. I continued it while hitting wealth. I am continuing to do it after retiring. But there's so many poor and middle class people who they think that when you take in content, it should be an escape from your life. There's a reason why Game of Thrones is an amazing show and has a huge fan base. It's a complete escape from reality. Okay.
Agreed.
If you take that content that you're taking in, and maybe not forever, but for a period of time, 3, 5, 7 years, something like that, and you take in content that will impact your finances, then you have, again, time multiplying 15 hours a day instead of 5 to do whatever I could watch every TV show in existence probably and catch up on them. But I'm still here on One Rental at a Time and the Lumberjack channel and Millennial Mike's channel and taking in content on things that are going to improve my finances. So I hope more poor and middle class are generally not watching this, but I'm hoping that they start taking in content like this.
Yeah. The last thing is I'll wrap this up. This has been a lot of fun, not knowing where this was going. Is a lot of the rich people I know own their decisions. A lot of the folks that aren't there yet blame others. Take that for what it's will. Dion, do me a favor. Where can people find you and your amazing channel?
They can find me right here on YouTube, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. And ironically, about an hour ago, I was having a phone call with some guys where I was looking at spending $15,000. The ultimate price tag on the conversation we were having was $15,000. They sat back and they said, so, take a week, take a month, tell us how long you think it's going to take to make the decision. And I wrapped up the contract by the end of the call. You have to be able to make decisions quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Well, Dion, thank you for your amazing folks. If you don't know, Dion is the voice behind 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires on Audible. If you have gotten that book on Audible, do me a favor, leave a review. Thank Dion for being the voice. I still can't believe he did that for us. Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Ciao.